that as we go through in time, we start to have more and more discoveries. We start to unearth more and more ancient cities that was always been there before, but then how come we didn't see it? So those are the types of explanations that I'll try to attempt to explain using XI technology or XI sciences. And this explains, say, how they moved massive stones thousands of miles from, say, their origin, how they cut them into like precision that is 1/1000th. That's half a human hair. How the hell did they do that back then? And then how they drilled in granite, materials that are granite and even harder material back then with precision. Again, you'd have to have, say, some industrial knowledge, some high-level technology, but then it's like, well, they were caveman days, so how could they do all that? Well, this is an attempt to explain that. So Ben, if you're listening, or Jimmy, if you're listening, I think this will explain a lot of those things that you're questioning about. All right. All right. First, what is XI? XI is exponential intelligence. Quickly, I discovered XI through 3 near-death experiences. It's allowed me to, say, step out of this reality and observe this reality from a very, very different perspective. Now, it's not anything woo-woo or anything like that. It's solid state science that is top level. It's top tier science. It's based on first principle methods. First principle methods, as you know, is that if there's no exception to the rule, you're at the first principle reason on why things happen. Right? And just to put it in order, just so we have a higher understanding of where XI sciences would be placed in the current sciences, is that, you know, at first they had Newtonian science, right? Newtonian physics. And the Newtonian physics basically explains, say, the bigger things of life, how an apple falls, right? Gravity, motion, electricity, and so on like that. Again, the bigger things that we can see and touch and feel. But then there was a lot of, say, missing pieces. Not that Newtonian physics was wrong, but there was a lot of missing pieces that Newtonian physics could not explain. And then, lo and behold, quantum mechanics or quantum physics started to come about, right? The quantum realm, the smaller particles that dictate how the larger particles of this reality work. And that's key as well. So there's a whole different field that dictates how the larger, say, realities or the larger physics principles work. Okay? Through this experience, we're going to start to find out, because there's a lot of holes in quantum mechanics or quantum physics that cannot be explained using quantum physics. And that's the key. So there has to be another science beyond the quantum beyond quantum physics that explains, say, the unseen, that bridges the gap between a time-bound reality and a timeless reality. Okay? And this is exponential intelligence sciences. Again, you, as Einstein would put it, you would have to, say, step outside of this reality to understand that reality. You can't stay in the same reality as the problem and then discover, say, the science behind it or understand why that reality exists. Again, you'd have to step outside of it, and that's what I've done. Over the past dozen years, my research company has, say, explored a lot of this types of information, explaining the unexplained, transforming lives like you would not believe, helping people heal themselves way beyond, say, the possibilities of what science could be, and bringing out human potential, having, you know, athletes or top performers in any of their field, creative field, you know, artists, musicians, football players, and so on like that, accelerate way beyond the limitations of their field. And that's how potent exponential intelligence is about. All right, so to understand what's going on here, like the Xi'An high stone chambers, how did that come about? Where did they get the technology? How did they move, what, 15 million metric tons of earth, right, to create these beautiful caves? How did they cut all that out? How did they dig all that out without having huge earth movers, right? And then what happened to the material? No one knows what happened to the material in those caves. And from what I understand, I think those caves could hold close to 10,000 people from what I'm understanding. I could be off on that. And there's going to be more and more caves found out about that. And then also, like I said, the pyramids. How do they move those stones and how do they cut them? We're not just talking about one or two stones. We're talking about thousands of stones that have created that pyramid into perfection. Again, less than 1/1000th of an inch of say error or discrepancy. That's pretty amazing. So something of the industrial mind had to be there. So how does all that work? So I'm going to attempt to explain it. There has to be a little preface to it because XI, exponential intelligence, sees things from a very different perspective. Now I'm going to put this down. So what we're doing, okay, is understanding, say, consciousness. It's a huge part of consciousness, and to define consciousness, because consciousness in today's world is, well, you're not inebriated, so you're conscious. You're aware of your surroundings and so on like that. Okay, that's a good explanation. That's totally cool. But again, consciousness in XI definition is very, very different. All right. So consciousness is in XI definition is that it's a global setting, kind of like an operating system. Like, for example, you have a Mac software, you have an Android software, you have iOS software, right? It sets the standard on how those programs can work. If it's not in the operating system, or if it's not, say, part of the constants of that operating system, you cannot access it. Okay? So in this scenario, a definition of consciousness is basically, say, a subset of all possibilities that exist for you. Okay? For example, if you are thinking of the letter A, okay? If you are thinking of the letter A, or if you are thinking of, hey, you know what? And by the way, this explains, as we go deeper, it'll explain how inventions are created. It'll explain why inventions are very destructive, no matter how benevolent the invention is. It'll explain all that and much, much more. It's quite an amazing science, and once you understand it, it's like, whoa, okay, I get it. And again, I'm not knocking down any other sciences, but this is that missing key that we've been searching for. So it's going to open up a lot of, say, doors that have been closed to, the scientists that really, really want to know the inner knowing on what's going on out there. So as consciousness, as a definition, consciousness is all subsets. So if it's not in the consciousness, you cannot think of it, you cannot feel it, you cannot experience it. For example, A, the letter A, has to be in a consciousness for you to go, oh, I'm going to have an alphabet with the letter A in it. Okay. Now, say for example that in this consciousness, in this subset. By the way, this subset includes how humans work, how realities work, how nature works. All those are like literally programs, okay, constants that this reality pulls from. If it's not in this consciousness, you cannot, say, exist from it. So if humans were zapped out of this consciousness, you would just disappear. So let me explain. So say there's another consciousness that comes along, okay, and in this reality, it has everything that this consciousness has except the letter A. There's no letter A in here. So as humans transform into higher levels of consciousness, what will happen is that all books, all concepts of the letter A, anything that has been written with the letter A, again, videos, speech, all that, from, say, materials that have, been video recorded or recorded like even 50, 100 years ago, everything will disappear. That letter A will disappear, much like the Mandela effect, right? Basically this explains the Mandela effect, by the way. So again, look up the Mandela effect. We've got a lot to cover on this. So again, if the letter A in the consciousness disappears, you will not be able to see it. You will not be able to think of it. Anything about the letter A will not exist. So that means that, if you have a product or again text with the letter A, somehow it'll all fill in like the letter A never existed. Okay? So that's what consciousness is. So basically, again, overall, consciousness is, say, an operating system. It's a global setting on the tools that you can access. Much like a computer program, right? It gives you the set of, say, constants that run that program. And then from that, you can run like a human program. And from that, your human program, you reach or you access the constants that are available for you, or the variables that are available for you. Very simple. It's just right down, straight out programming for you. All right. So the next thing I want to explain is layers of consciousness, and this is where it gets really intriguing. This is where the future is the past. The past is the future, and it gets really crazy because it literally bends the notion of, say, space and time and how time actually works. And this is where some people think time might go backwards, but it really doesn't. Okay, it's always a constant. It's always going forward. As a note, time is always constant. How we see it through the layers, through the level of consciousness that we're in, we can bend it or stretch it or compress it. Okay? That's one side note as well. All right, so here's layers of consciousness. And by the way, there's hundreds and hundreds of layers of consciousness. All right, so I'll just simplify it for you. And this is reality or consciousness zero. Okay, this is the 0 point. This is the 0 point consciousness. This consciousness is the only consciousness that has, like I said, a subset over here. As you remember, this is the only layer that has the possibilities of creating, say, density. This is where you experience things. This is where you can touch and feel and see things. Again, anything above the zero state consciousness, you cannot see, you cannot say, you cannot create density. Okay? So this is basically, if you want to call it, death for the physical being. So you can exist in this consciousness, or you can expand into this consciousness, and many scientists do, and I'll explain that as well. It gives you a better idea, a better concept before I get into how ancient civilizations had amazing technologies that, say, baffle the mind on how they, say, accessed it, or how they created those amazing, say, feats of technology that we can't even do today. Okay? So zero level consciousness, this is where, again, density occurs. Okay? So the frequencies are heavy here. Again, we can touch, feel, and experience. Okay? It's physical bound time and space. Okay? The higher we go, by the way, the lighter or the thinner or the more efficient consciousness gets. Okay? So what you can do here, but again at very different levels. So at this layer, this is the physical layer. This is the physical layer. Okay. So this is like layer. This is consciousness 1, consciousness 2, consciousness 3, and consciousness 4. Again, there's thousands of consciousness beyond, just this. So, as a side note, let me just explain how time and space work for you as well. You can see here, right? Okay. So this is how, say, consciousness works, or this is how time and space works, by the way, right? So you have an intention that is beyond, say, the physical realm, right? Beyond time and space. If you want to call it your spirit, you can. I would call it, say, your timeless self or your timeless being, okay? Or a timeless concept that comes through. So the first layer, just like a pyramid or a pyramid, say, reflects that light, just like a prism would, okay? This single beam of intention has all possibilities, say, within that beam. But as it hits the first filter, again, this prism called, say, the molecule of time and space. Again, in XI, time and space is basically, say, considered a molecule. It's not, say, a tool of, say, dimensions or a tool of measure. It literally is, say, a molecule. And I can explain that in a bit as well. But so the first layer that you have here would be, say, how time and space, the physics of time and space. So as this intention, pure intention of all possibilities that can exist, and this is where, again, it goes back to Einstein. If it wasn't for time and space, everything will happen all at once. Okay, this was that was his theory, and he's absolutely right. At this level, everything can happen all at once. So what happens, or how we say process that down, excuse me, is to create a filter on how this light comes through. Again, the impact of time and space. So that initial point is, say, the instructions on how time-space works. Now in this realm, let's just make it simple. It's a 24-hour clock. Okay? Maybe in another universe, in another, say, parallel dimension, time and space might have a different rule set. And then from there, you might have the next filter. These are all filters that, say, this light goes through. So the next filter would be the mechanics, the physics, like electromagnetics, how chemical reactions work, and so on and so on. And then the next filter would be, say, on this plane, how the universe puts itself together. And then the next filter would be, say, how planetary systems and so on like that work. The next filter, as we get into it, would be, say, how Earth is formed, right? Because Earth has to have a filter. And then from Earth, you've got, say, nature. So all these, again, are all filtered down. Again, layers of consciousness, or layers of global settings. And then you get into the Earth filter, nature, and then from there, the species within nature. And then this explains, say, well, you have to have a filter for being human. And again, it's based on all of this. So whatever has happened in human experience exists in that filter or subset. Okay? So you filter yourself out. And then I can go on. And then from that human filter, you have, say, certain cultures, right? And then so on and so on and so on until you get to your point where it's like family dynamics, right? That's a filter for you. And then men or women, that's a filter for you. And then your age experience, and so on until you render you the way you are, or your self-image. So that's how layers of consciousness filter out or render, say, a simulation in this matrix called you, or anything around here. Now there's fluid consciousness, okay? And then there's, say, solid consciousness. Solid consciousness is, Earth, planetary systems, and so on like that. Those things just don't move. They're solid. And no matter what layer of consciousness that you exist in or you're aware of, well, it's always the same. It's just how you see the things. Okay? So fluid consciousness is, again, you expanding in. Now, you have your identity, but say as you grow, right, as you get older, you go into another layer, an identity of self. Again, that's another layer or filter of consciousness for you. All right, so what does that have to do with ancient technologies and so on like that? All right, so let me explain. So this, basically, this here that I explained is this here, okay? And then one more thing that I'll explain is, so that light is here. And again, all those filters, I'm just making it easier for us to understand. All right, so one last thing that I'd like to explain, and then this is how we can get into, say, how, say, amazing technologies have been created in the past that we can't even create now, okay? And it's crazy stuff, so just bear with me. Pretty hard to explain because it's unfathomable, but then once you understand, it's like, oh shit, makes a lot of sense, all right? All right, so one last thing. So you have Einstein, or let's say Nikola Tesla, okay? So Nikola Tesla, and if you look at any inventor, if you ask them, if you ask any of those great inventors, they're like, where did you get your idea or concept of this machine, wireless technology and so on like that? They'll always go, not at this level, right? They accessed a higher level of consciousness where that possibility existed, okay? For example, Nikola Tesla, let's put NT, he lives in this consciousness. So how he accesses it, and this is how he goes, be alone. So when he's alone, he actually goes into deep state trances. You might not want to call it meditation because he's a scientist, but deep state meditations, okay, where he can leave this physical body behind, okay, his consciousness behind. So to create Nikola Tesla, again, his light, shines through all these filters. Most people, their consciousness or their rendition of who they are exist in the same consciousness as their physical form. Okay? So those brilliant beings, they do not do that. Those brilliant beings, what they do is that they expand their consciousness, or actually escape this physical reality. They literally move beyond these filters. So say, for example, that Nikola Tesla comes up with wireless technology. That technology, wireless technology, exists at this level. Okay? Wireless technology does not exist at any of these levels. So you would have to access this technology, like I said before. If the letter A did not exist, it would just disappear. So in this technology, in this reality, wireless technology did not exist. Somebody would have to have, brought this technology into this physical plane and then create it here. But here's a couple symptoms or issues with, bringing variables from a different consciousness into, another consciousness. Just like moving a plant. Say you brought a plant from the Amazon jungle, the rainforest, and you brought it, here in Minnesota. Well, that plant is not going to work very well here. It's going to probably die off, especially in the wintertime, right? Because the environment for that, plant to grow and expand, the nourishment that it needs, and so on like that, does not exist here. It's not the right environment for it dies, or it becomes detrimental. This is where Einstein, this is where Tesla, this is where many great scientists, including the gentleman, I believe in Canada, right, that invented AI, right, ChatGPT and so on. He wanted to shut down the system because it's oh my God, what have I done? The reason why he starts to realize that it's that is going to destroy humanity. And this is where Elon Musk sees it as well. Elon Musk, again, goes into different levels of consciousness, and that's where he can know the future or sense the future. But Elon Musk, even Elon, again, he can ascend higher. And by the way, I can help Elon do it properly, because as he ages, he'll kind of get a little disoriented. So you have to, expand into consciousness properly. Otherwise, like Nikola Tesla, as he aged, he got, mentally disoriented. Okay? So again, you have to do it properly, and I teach people how to do that, expand into higher realms or possibilities. And that's what I do for high-profile individuals. All right, so back to Nikola Tesla. What he does is literally, he jumps up to this level. He understands this consciousness. He understands the concept of this, the possibilities here. He understands, in this case, wireless technology. And then he drops back down here, and he goes, okay, how do I invent that here? How do I create the machinery here? So again, what happens is that wireless technology in this reality can become destructive. Okay? Just like, social media becomes destructive because social media, or knowing everything about others, around you, again, it became very destructive. It's not the invention, by the way, that destroys society. It's the level of consciousness that was pulled into, the zero state consciousness that destroys society. Again, so we have to elevate ourselves. So if we wanted to do, wireless technology right, or social media right, for example, what we would have to do as humans, if wireless technology is here, well, we would have to raise ourselves to this consciousness, and then therefore wireless technology would be benevolent for us, and it'll be beneficial for us, instead of giving us cancers and so on like that. Whether you believe that or not doesn't really matter. Again, it's not the most beneficial for human use, right? All right. So one more piece on all this is that like I said, is that what layer of consciousness are you creating yourself in? Okay. So in this gets into the nitty-gritty on, say, how advanced technologies or there were advanced civilizations back in the past. Okay. So with that, you have a high level, say, technology, okay, exists here. Like advanced tool cutting, okay, it exists here. Okay, with each technology, as say the limitless possibilities filter through, what happens is that, well, there are different possibilities, different variables that start to show up. So this, say, singular technology, okay, or invention, when it goes through this filter, you might have, say, different versions of this. So this splits up into, say, different possibilities, okay? And then it goes through another filter. So this, for example, again, so creates, again, different possibilities for us. So DC has each technology, and say this goes down to this this consciousness of possibilities here, which was only singular here. Again, it gets more and more and more. And then this goes down here. And then this, has, say, another subset of 3 possibilities. So with each layer, all sets of possibilities start to create themselves. At the 0 layer, again, this comes down here, and you'll have, say, 3 more. Or however, say, it divides itself. So what started as a concept of oneness, again, through the possibilities, look at how many different, say, possibilities on how you could create that technology here. Now, none of these possibilities will be as pure as this. And none of these, again, would be as advantageous as the possibility or, if we raised our consciousness. This also explains why, say, societies always get destroyed, right? Or they destroy themselves. Because we didn't raise technology. We didn't raise our consciousness. We just grabbed technologies from above here, brought them down here. It becomes destructive. We stay, say, level, just like, what's that guy's name? Just like singularity. Ray Kurzweil, right? He explains singularity. This explains singularity. This singularity is basically where, human consciousness doesn't evolve, basically devolve, and then technology, goes like that. That cross point is where we're at. That's what Ray Kurzweil. This explains that. Where technology, again, we're stealing technology that are in different layers of consciousness. What we should be doing is trying to elevate human consciousness to step into these other, say, realities. Okay? So, the next piece to explain all this, again, this is all new stuff for you, so I need to explain all the, say, components to it so we can put it all together. Okay, so the next piece for you is really important, is what level of consciousness are you rendering yourself? And this will give you, say, the key understanding on how, say, ancient civilizations had amazing technologies that we can't even explain now. All right? So like I said, we'll redraw these layers of consciousness. Again, this is always level 0 consciousness. This is where density occurs. This is the only place where density occurs. All right. So over time, not exactly sure, how long it takes, but there are phases. Okay. So what that means is that, okay, there's 2 components that I need to explain. So over time, time and space is always, say, upgrading itself. It's like a software update. It's always upgrading itself. It's always efficient. And this is where, if you look at how the industrial age, say, comes to be, and then all of a sudden everything has changed about that, or say cellular knowledge or cellular phone technology, right? Changes everything. That's because the consciousness changed. So how does that work? All right. So this is like, imagine this as a stack of records. Back in the old days, remember you had a stack of records that you could put on your, turntable, and then one record finished, the needle steps back, and then the next record falls down, starts playing. Pretty much the same thing here. So these consciousness layers are stacked for you. Okay. So right now, say level 0 consciousness, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Okay. Level 0 consciousness is the record, the turntable. Okay. That's where the disc sets. So this level 0 never changes, but the consciousness is always dropping down. Again, I believe it's like every 13 point some thousand years, there's like another layer that drops down, another layer of consciousness. And again, if you look at, say, societies, it's not every 13,000 years, but major levels of change come about, because then that record is done, or that consciousness is complete, and then the next layer drops down. But so within human time frames, the Stone Age into the Metal Age, into the Golden Age or the Industrial Age, into the Communication Age, and so on and so on. If you look, there's cycles in that. That's because within, say, a thicker layer of consciousness, there's, again, infinite layers within each consciousness. What we're coming to in today's world, and that's why today's world is in such upheaval, is because this whole stack is done. We're moving into another layer. Okay? So what that means, okay, and we'll just make it simple for us. What that means is that this layer drops down here. So now this becomes 0 level consciousness. But again, this consciousness drops down, just like that record player. Okay? This becomes level 1 consciousness. This becomes level 2, and so on. Okay? So the whole thing drops down, because this is the playing field. This is the head, the player. Okay? It doesn't go anywhere else. This is the reality, or this is the surface of the earth. The reason why that's important, okay, and here's the key, the reason why that's important is back in the day, 20,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago, I don't know. Those things I don't know. But back in the day, we could create, but we did not know how to create ourselves differently. Okay? So what that means is that, so say you have, if you want to call it aliens or ancient civilizations with high-level technology. All right. So say they created themselves here. Okay? They did not know how to render any of these layers. They did not know how to they did not have the logistics or the science to go, hey, I want to create myself at lower levels. But so what they would do is literally project themselves down to this level. Okay? And this is where, they create cities, they create, amazing vases with, again, a precision of 1/1000th, half of a human hair. This is amazing technologies happen. So, and this is where it gets a little, sketchy. So just walk through me here. Just walk with me. So again, what humans do now is that we've evolved. Okay. By the way, this kind of explains how aliens work as well. Okay. But what humans have done now is like, oh, you know what? We can render ourselves here. Okay, that's that person here, and then we create the reality. So, which isn't the most beneficial, by the way, but it allows us a better technology. So the technology that was here, again, say precision cutting, okay, wireless technology, and so on like that. That's a Tesla tapped into. Okay, they brought this technology into physical reality from this state of consciousness. They bypassed all these layers and created density here, okay, which is quite amazing. So this is, and one more thing to explain is that, well, I did explain that earlier, by the way. So in this reality, like I showed you here, one, it splits into more possibilities, more possibilities, more possibilities, more possibilities. So the top level, say, technology for that is up here. Okay? So here's really the key. So if you are an ancient civilization or an ancient race, okay, creating this here. So this was, say, 20,000 years ago. So that's, say, 20,000 years ago. Okay. So they created a civilization, or they created pyramids, or they created tools, or whatever that they created. Okay, 20,000 years ago. So here's how what we are discovering, and this falls in line with what I said earlier, where nowadays more and more, say, ancient civilizations are being unearthed. There's a ton of them being unearthed in India, by the way, right? Huge cities in the metropolis of India. Why didn't anybody see it before? Okay. And I'll just give you a very simple example. So say that you put your key on a dresser, your car keys on a dresser, and then you go back to that dresser and it's like, shit, it's not there. You can search the whole house. It's not there, right? And then you come back to that dresser and it's like there. It's like, shit, I'm losing my mind, right? No, you're not. So those are momentary gaps of, say, realities or dimensions or consciousness. So when you left your key, you were in one state or one dimension of time and space. Okay? When you come back, you're in a different state or a different dimension of time and space. Therefore, you cannot see the keys that are there for you. Right? That's a simple example. So if you put yourself in the same state, you will see those keys appear like they normally do. Right? So that's, again, a simple example, and it happens all the time. It allows us to really understand different realities or different possibilities or different dimensions of time and space. Right? So now, if this say civilization is bypassing all these realities and then again rendering from this knowledge, this technology. So the more you come down to your consciousness comes down to, say, closer and closer to, say, time and space, what will happen for you is that basically you get dumber and dumber. Okay? The abilities, the possibilities, the technology that you can access, again, you'd have to dumb yourself down to understand or create, say, the magic of space and time. So space and time is basically a magic trick, and these are all the layers within that magic trick. If you know the magic trick, you know the magic fails or disappears from it, right? It's not so magical anymore. So the key is like, how do you stay at this level and understand the magic on how you created yourself? Okay, so that, again, that's another side step, but again, something to think about. All right, so this is how a lot of ancient civilizations are being discovered. This is how this will explain, say, the precision technology and all that. So you have the precision technology. They figured it out here 20,000 years ago. Okay, so Okay. So, if you are not of this consciousness, if you are not of this consciousness, you will not see the city here. So say that, again, most of the individuals, most of the human population, their consciousness is here and they render themselves here. That's why their lives aren't, say, as beneficial, because they're not using the potentiality of a higher level, say, sense of self, or the power within, or, as Yoda would put it, the force within. They're not using that power above here. So again, if you exist within the same level of consciousness, you would not see what is here. Okay? So one more thing to understand is how time works, or how time stamping works. Okay? So here goes on how timestamps work. Timestamp is when you come into, say, a single cell. There's a flash of light. You get literally time-stamped. And that is based on, and that tells your cellular biology, your genetics, on how to render yourself in space and time. And I'll give you an extreme version, by the way. So say somebody was born in the year 2023. Okay? Their timestamp was, say, 50 years off back. So basically, they were born in 2023, but 50 years off, that would be what, 1973? Okay, so that's 1973. So they're 50 years off. Their timestamp is 50 years off. So what they would be, again, nobody could really exist because they'd be so disoriented or distorted or mentally incapable. But again, just to give you an example, what would happen is that that person would not see anything forward of 1973 in this case. So they would not understand computer technology. They would not see computers. They would not say, they would see a building, but they would see, say, that building from 1973, because they have no access to, say, the current consciousness. Kind of like AI today, right? It's not connected to the internet just yet. They just have access to, again, from whatever it is, 2021 and before. Nothing forward. Again, it's the exact same example. They cannot access whatever happened. But as they grow, they'll see things appear for them, right? Kind of crazy. But if you've ever seen people who are disoriented, time disorientation or sleep deprivation and so on like that, that explains a lot of that as well. But so back to this example, okay? If this was created, again, although it was created 20,000 years ago, the consciousness is off. Your time settings is off. You will not see this. You will not see the ancient cities. Or again, as time has evolved, it's buried under sand or whatever. So you would not see this. But here's the key. Over time, and again, I don't know the exact period as consciousness cycles down. So this is a time value. This was 20K, 20,000 years ago. Okay. All right. So this is how everything gets put together. What I've explained. Okay. All those components. Now we've got those components, and this will explain how all those things fit together. All right. So with each consciousness, and just for clarity, so each consciousness takes 4,000 years to come into play. Okay. So again, consciousness 1 drops down into the 0 state. Okay. And then consciousness 2 drops down into 1, 3 drops down, and then a new consciousness comes in. So for example, this consciousness here, we'll just create a triangle. So this consciousness with this information, this technology, this advancement is basically coming down here. All right, so this explains, now that we've got all the components, let's put all those components together, and then you'll get that aha moment, okay? So for example, again, just to reiterate, this consciousness, again, from 20,000 years ago, developed something physical here, okay, physical form. But you will not see it, you cannot see it, because this is not part of your consciousness, okay? This is not part of your consciousness, and if it's not part of your consciousness, you will not see it, you will not experience it, you will not, again, even if it's right in front of you. It does not exist, because time and space, again, is very different. The frequencies back then are very different than what it is today. Hence, you cannot see it, because there's the fabric of space and time are interlaced. Okay, so what needs to happen, or why we're discovering all these, say, ancient civilizations, again, the technologies and how they did that we don't even know today, this is the reason why. So we've got 5 layers here. Okay, so for example, for this layer 5 to come down and play, just like that record player, right? It takes every 4,000 years, this new consciousness drops in. The new consciousness drops in, and you go, oh, okay. So here's the key. Consciousness 1 drops into the 0 state and starts playing. Consciousness 2 drops into 1, 3 drops into 2, 4 drops into 3, 5 into 4. So over time, okay, and this is a time scale. Time is moving forward like it always does, never really goes backwards. What'll happen is that it'll take, say, 20,000 years for this consciousness to drop down to this level. Okay? That's where we start to, say, unearth or start to see some of the scientific discoveries, what happened in this plane, what happened on Earth back then. So this is where the past is our future, depending on the consciousness level, that, again, the 0 state consciousness level. So over time, again, every 4,000 years, what happens is, again, this consciousness 5 drops into this here. Okay, so this is like, again, as a time frame, 4,000 years. It took 4,000 years for this drop to this. Okay, it took another 4,000 to, again, drop down into this layer, and then another, say, 4,000 years. I'm running out of board space to drop down to this layer. Okay, so here's the key. This is where, say, we are as of today. Okay, so we're over here now. Okay, this is 2023. Okay, so it's 2023. The key is that it dropped down. Again, it took 4,000 years. Again, that's just an example for you. I don't know the exact, say, cycle that consciousness drops down. But the closer it gets, the more see-through that, the more see-through, or how we can access knowledge, because it's closer, right? It's about proximity, by the way. I call it dimensional. Dimensional goal setting, dimensional, again, creation, and so on like that. So the closer we are to this consciousness, the technology or the buildings or whatever, again, that was created, this is where great discoveries are made every 10, 20 years. You think about it, right? It's like all of a sudden we're seeing all these great discoveries that we never saw before. Despite Google Maps, despite mapping everything that there is, why aren't we seeing it? This explains how, again, consciousness works. So now we're starting to see some of, again, the buildings and so on like that. But we will not see, say, maybe the tools that was created, or we will not fathom the tools that was created. And just to give you an example, say that the discoveries of, say, the perfectly drilled holes, or the technology of, of cutting those huge stone blocks in precision. Okay? Say that the technological area or industrial era did not exist yet, and we discovered that. We would not fathom or figure out, it's like, how the hell did they do that? Because we weren't in that consciousness of the industrial age. So we would have no clue. Okay? But as we came into the industrial age, we go, oh, and then we kind of put the pieces together. Right? We start to understand, it's like, oh, that's how they could have done it. But before the industrial age, there's no way in hell. It's like, how did they do that, right? It'd be like magic, right? Or wizardry. So now it's a really exciting time, because what happened long, long time ago, and this could be like 1 million years ago, as these things drop down, new sciences will come through, new technologies come through. As this, basically, maybe in the next, 4,000 years or maybe sooner, again, this is just an example, this one drops down to here. Again, this consciousness that was 20,000 years ago back here, okay? We start to see, or we start to have access, maybe by 2030, 2040, right? We start to have access to not only how they created that precision technology, but again, we start to have access and create our own technology that they used way back here, 20,000 years ago. So do you see, as time goes by and as consciousness keeps dropping down and playing, right, we come into a crossroad. And as we do, the knowledge that was up here for us that's accessible, okay, that we couldn't reach, some people can, like Tesla and so on, it becomes, say, more benevolent here, because now we exist in the same consciousness as the technology. And that's where technology, by the way, becomes benevolent. And this is where we start to find, say, remains of tools that we've never seen before. So we would go back to those, archaeological sites, and it's like, hey, guys, you know what? I dug something up, and now we're finding tools. Well, why didn't we find tools? Because again, those aren't dynamic. Those were dynamic, say, consciousness or fluid consciousness, as I talked about before. Okay, those things kind of shift. They're not solid, say, like the Earth plane. If you create something on the Earth, again, like huge buildings, huge stones, so on like that, they'll tend to stay, because again, there's a solid consciousness for it. But fluid consciousness, if you create like a tool, okay, ideations, scrolls, for example, or anything else in that fluid consciousness, they can only appear in the consciousness that it existed in. Okay, so just think of it. As this drops down, what we're going to do is we're going to start to see, say, the materials, the 15, cubic tons of say, Earth. That it's like, shit, what the hell happened? Where did it all go? Right, from the caves in China. Well, we'll start to see. It's like, oh shit, that's how they did it. That's where they did it. We'll start to see the machinery. We'll start to see the technology. We'll start to see how they drilled those holes, in granite. So that explains, hopefully, how the unexplained work. So if you have any questions, you can always contact me. You can you can go to XI. You can check me out. Again, mossajati.com. You can send an email at customers@mossajati.com, or better yet, my partner, Fei, F-A-Y, at mossajati.com, MASSAJADY.com. So one last thing, guys, just to explain something. And it was discussed on the Joe Rogan podcast with Jimmy and Ben, Jim Corsetti and Ben, is that they couldn't figure out, or they were talking about, it's like, well, how did they drill so precisely in, say, a material that was granite or something even more dense or harder than granite, right? And they were talking about, say, these spirals in these holes. Okay, so and you know, Joe had some ideas. Ben had Jim and Ben had some ideas and so on like that. But here's the key, guys. Something that we kind of overlooked. Okay, because you guys were talking about the spirals, and again the spirals down on that. They would have had to have a tool that's, you know, moved slow. Well, you know what you guys said, or you can go back to that part on the Joe Rogan podcast. But in reality, basically, it's very simple, right? The technology is still amazing, by the way, to drill something like that. But just to explain the spirals, right, for you, is that it's just like what we do today. Okay? When you want to thread something, what do? You drill a pilot hole. You drill a hole into the material, and then what do? You put a threader in there to create the spirals. So those holes were basically the first, say, concepts of maybe a screw mechanism. Okay, so think of it that way. So again, they drilled a hole, again with amazing technology that we'll find out as consciousness comes about. By the way, I can put people into those layers of consciousness so we don't have to wait 4,000 years. That's what my expertise in. By the way, I've helped other people leapfrog into different layers. This is where, say, product innovation, instead of taking 10 years, will only take like, say, 4 or 5 months to create. So basically to create those holes, and then again to explain the spirals, okay, again, Ben and Jimmy could be right, but overall it's pretty simple. Something that you know, even you know, that we kind of got overlooked is like, you know, when you're drilling or when you're creating a threaded you know, a piece, what do? You create a pilot hole. You drill a pilot hole with you know, something that goes much faster, right? Creating that perfect hole cylinder for you, and then you tap it. You tap it with a threader, and then that creates that thread on there. So I believe that this is, say, the first use of, say, a screw. So in those holes, they probably put something in there, and then they spun it, and it sat there really tight, just like a screw would. So hopefully that helps, guys. Again, you can contact me. Love to chat with you guys even deeper, and maybe even get you into like deep level states where I can help you, say, understand or access that knowledge that lies there, so we don't have to wait 4, 10,000 or 20,000 years to discover. Okay? All right. Take care. Peace.